Okay, my first official video blog of the Operation Peace Village progress, I suppose. So I just wanted to go through the broad strokes of where I am because I have kind of put things in a full swing compared to the preliminary stuff I was doing. And it is, I should start with the date actually. Bear with me, it's my first one. I'm also working on getting lighting and all this other stuff soon, but I figured I'd just get the process going. It is 7 p.m. on Sunday, July 17th. And so for those who don't know me, my name is Adnan Zabian, and I am the lead designer, architect, engineer, technical person for the Operation Peace Village. I can get more about my qualifications and all that stuff, I suppose, in the future ones. But right now, I want to show you what I've been working on during the weekend and to show kind of the beginning point of where I can see this going. So I'm going to share my screen here. So right here is the first software the first thing that I'm doing to kind of put together a full kind of a site layout of how I can see this going. So the main thing that I'm going for this, so this specific layout is 600 feet across this way, 600 feet across that way. So I did the math, it's about 8.5 acres worth of space, can fit a total of approximately 300 people comfortably. On a single story. Now these can be layered and stacked if need be, but this is just the initial the initial how we see this going. And then as funds and things start opening up, we can start adding to this. So I'm going to start with the first thing. So it's a combination of things. So we have this outer wall right here is going to be essentially a series of shipping containers that are going to be modified into cultivation rooms and greenhouse rooms and storage, battery backup. This is a remote option, so there's not the urban option, there's the remote option, I should say. And so you got that. And then over here is the inner ring, and these are comprised of single containers that are stacked. Both of them are stacked 2 level up. So this kind of forms a kind of a gate buffer around that for the sake of security should need be or anything like that. Because we've been talking, we're looking at something like this. And also, so this is a quadrant. So I want to have everything divided up into quadrants. So this is a full size quadrant, basically. Now, if we don't have the funds to do a full size quadrant, of course, it's going to be altered and scaled or done in stages as need be. So these here are actually going to be gates to allow vehicles and people to come through. And this inner and outer ring here on the second level will be walkways and security lookouts, anything that's essentially needed to get around a little bit quicker if you're on foot. And there's going to be a series of, I'm going to have strategically in these corners, there's staircase and eventually elevators should be, but staircases. And that's going to be coming down to a series of units. So up here, we have 2-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, and bachelors. These are all the corresponding parking spaces. And we're staging these all out. And we got a driveway here, and we got more 1-bedrooms here, more 2-bedrooms here. Then over here we have a stackable modular multiple complex living. This is going to be 2 levels. We can go higher, but we're starting everything at 2 levels maximum. It's a community center. Over here are classrooms as well as computer labs if we need. Places of worship, essentially anything along the lines of that that we need will be in these series of units here. This is the medical office with a little bit of a medical office here. Medical Center. This here are a combination of shops or anything needed for community kitchens or a little restaurant or people where they need a spot to do food or clothing distribution or anything of any sort is here. So what we have here, and then number 7 we have here is what is used to basically, so these 2 are bathrooms here. These are all add-ons. So all of this stuff is completely modular. All the structures are completely prefabricated. And this here is a little micro power plant, which will be set up along here, which I'll get into later. Also some more shops, some more stuff down here, because we need to have, with these, you got to have some sort of a local commerce or local places where people can go for any purpose needed. If you want to set up an office in there, whatever we need to have that here. So I kind of want to centralize all these services in the middle here. And down south here, we have more housing units here. And along here, which I'm working on here, which I wanted to do is, so it's a combination of a green space, community gardens, and then these units that are going to be along the perimeter are going to be used, of course. So there's going to be greenhouses, cultivation rooms, micro power plants, gray water, black water, pump distribution facilities. So what I'm doing is, this is the list of everything that I'm classifying as individual units that is going to be in our, that we're going to have access to in terms of having the designs finished, which are being worked on, of course. But this is the list here. We've got 2-bedroom units, we've got medical clinic, community center, 1-bedroom studio apartments, shop units, storage units, lavatory units, parking, gray water tanks units. Now, when I say storage units and storage units, they're not doubled up. One can be a dry storage for food. The other one is used for storage for anything else that we need. So there's 2 different kinds of storage I'm going to have, because that's essentially what's going to be needed. Now, also, I show the parking there. Gray water tank units, black water and tank units, fresh water, pump and filtration units, gray and black water pump treatment systems, storage units for cultivation and greenhouse units, walkway units, which are going to be the covered one around the perimeter. Vehicle parking, which can be set basically however you want, but I just have it in this configuration because I need to have some sort of a blueprint to start with, so that way we can kind of have this as our demo unit for remote areas. This is also very, very, very possible to be doubled as an urban unit. However, it just needs to be modified in a certain way, because in the urban you might not have 8.5 acres to play with. In the urban thing, so we would just have to scale that down. That's going to be the next thing we'll come up with. Security units, gate units, walkway, staircase, IT, fire suppression units, services offices, freshwater units, large and small water units. That's what I have so far. But I have here, I'm starting a database because there could be something that can come up that I'm going to think of and I'm going to add. So the list comes in this database, and eventually I'm going to stand upon all of these. And I'm actually going to list all this different specifications and fire ratings and codes and all those other things that these things have to fall under and adhere to, depending on where we're going. So that way it can be as universal as possible to, once we start taking these all over the world, from country to country, things will differ a little bit. So that way I'm actually working out on a coded database that configures from the part of the world it is. So that way from the part of the world we know that we're going, I can automatically know what kind of insulation is needed, what kind of R values are needed, what kind of fire rate is needed, what kind of heating and cooling loads are needed for each one of these units. Now, the beauty of these things is that I'm actually using a unibody construction custom designed by myself. Only the perimeter units are going to be used by the containers for 2 reasons. Containers are there, they're plentiful, they're everywhere, and they're also extremely strong. So I wanted to have those outer gates to, in the case of an emergency, whatever may happen, they can lock everything down and close it all so that they have kind of like a fort setup that's double walled. So you can, the outer walls lock it, then you got the green spaces, the buffer, then you got the inner walls that are all going to be locked down. in case it's needed. And containers are very strong in terms of having to serve, and they can be reinforced easily, easier, and they can be stacked simpler. So those can be modified in a way for what's needed, and they are structurally the stronger. However, for the living unit purpose, I have my own unibody construction done, which I'm going to get into that. But over here are the full things: gate units, security units, locker units, IT, holding cell and emergency services. It's reality. Unfortunately, you might need to have a couple of holding cells there, just in case something happens. When you have a community, you got to have some sort of place just in case. Freshwater units, garage units. Also, on the other side, we might have some garages, because I do understand that people are going to be coming with vehicles and need a spot to park their vehicles when they're coming in. And as things grow and we have the room, you just start another quadrant. That's as simple as well, not simple, but from a planning perspective, that can be done. And then you can, once you add your quadrants, and we'll go back to this. So you have this quadrant here. This is a full quadrant, 8.5 acres, can comfortably fit 300 people comfortably. And there'll be a minimum reason, like all of our needs will be met. So if in the event we are going through some sort of a situation where we need to lock everything down, we have our green spaces, we have our greenhouses, we have our cultivation facilities, we have all those things on the outer ring here. And this can also double as a track for exercising, all sorts of things, garden, and so this is self-facing area to good for a garden there, depending on where we're going. Also greenhouses on the other side, you have garages. So this whole thing is that how I was kind of looking at this is I have to think of every single aspect that the community would need, and how to make it where we can build what's needed in the factory, throw it on a truck, and take it out to the site, and install it, and off we go. Sort of like a modular organism. You have to look at it as when organisms change and mutate, your needs change, so you got to make sure that you have everything there. And of course, I don't want this to feel like to kind of like a prison in a way. I want this to, this is the whole thing with me, is it's supposed to be a community where that can be built by the community, which is also another thing that we're exploring. But what I'm pitching is that my company is going to be the one building the units to a certain degree. And then once you put them in the spot, it can be adapted and finished by the local community there. And then there's certain structures that can be 100% built by the community right there, because it's more than just building units, putting them in and say, all right, have a good time, take care. Our whole goal with this thing is that we can actually go in, educate, and show and teach new people about this industry that I've loved and come to love and been extremely passionate and dedicated my life to for the last decade of my life. Prior to that, I was in renewable energy and also architecture, traditional architecture and construction. I was doing that as well. So again, I can talk more about myself and my travels and all that stuff. I got lots of vlogs to do. So that's essentially what we're doing here for this. And then from there, my next step is I'm going to finish up this design. And once it's done, we can start. I already have some units kind of already planned out how we're going to do it. So for example, here's a medical unit here. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 6 individual pieces to make a little medical office unit. Other thing here, this is a store, grocery store layout for shops. You know what I'm saying? This example just for a grocery store with a tiny little, with a smaller restaurant here. You can go in, you want something to eat, they got this right here. And then you got the grocery stores. Now it could be anything, it could be shops, offices. This is speaking of the grocery store. There's a community center right here. There's one washroom, it's going to have a library, it's going to have individual break rooms, it's going to have a lounge, it's going to have an IT, internet cafe area here. So there's a room of space, and then there's going to be a courtyard in the middle. this is a space for the community to meet and to essentially have a place to go. Again, if it's needed, it's there, and it can be something to start. It's a good nucleus to the beginning of the organism. It's the community center, I think, because you can start with the community center and expand up from there. Then we got the 2-bedroom units over here. Of course, I got 3Ds and everything. I'm just right now. I'm in the first stage of the in-depth design, and I usually go from hand sketch to AutoCAD, then to either programs such as SketchUp or Revit or SolidWorks. I do all of that. I look at all of them. But in this case, I like to go from hand sketch to AutoCAD because you just kind of lay everything out, and then you can even finish it all in AutoCAD too. It's a very broad program. However, SolidWorks, ArchiCAD, Revit, those are ones that eventually I want to start using exclusively, and just having AutoCAD as my base program. But of course, I need funding for that, additional funding for that. I've been paying for all these programs and everything myself so far. So this is a 1-bedroom unit here. You see here, with an ensuite, by the way. Access to an ensuite. That's 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Nice, comfortable 1-bedroom apartment, essentially. Is where we're going to be living. Now, these units can be individually put in as need be. So this is a scaled down version of this. So this is what I was talking about. We can scale things down. This is a scaled down version here. So if you don't have, 600 feet by 600 feet, which is 8.5 acres, approximately. If you have this one across is 336 feet, about 340 feet with the space. Plus, which is by over here. Now this is comfortable by 256 feet. So call it 350 by 260 feet is this option, which is approximately, I haven't done the math, but I think it's about 3 acres. But again, this is with laneways, and this is, this one here can be done in any configuration. That's the beauty about modular, is that you can kind of use it in different separate configurations. So the unibody design, that is a good one I would like to show. I'm going to go into something else that I was doing for a dental office. Okay, I'm going to do that one. I'm going to show kind of what I was kind of trying to tell you about my unibody design. So this is a unibody design here. This is a base floor where all of our units start as life LS. All these drawings and everything that you see were done by myself personally, by the way, just for the record. No one's helped me on this. This is 100% my work, everything that you see that I'm showing to you. So there's a lower and upper deck. Lower deck because that's going to be used for the individual units, gray water, hot water tanks, black water tanks, freshwater tanks, storage, all sorts of things that need to be done to give space to be up, and they can all be serviced from down here, and they'll have access doors in case of maintenance. So this is the base frame for every single one of the units that you saw, apart from the perimeter units, are all constructed from the same base frame that you see here. I got this idea actually from Lee Iacocca, believe it or not. I remember years ago I was reading a documentary, his autobiography actually, and he was the one who actually revolutionized with the idea of using one frame to construct several different vehicles. So I'm like, well, why can't we use one frame to construct different applications? So we use one frame and we can make a plethora of things out of that same frame. So therefore it keeps your costs down, keeps your production at maximum amount. And it's also a way that people can, it's also for training purposes to a certain degree. It's easier to do that. So this was the base frame design that I did for all of these things. Just kind of showing you around. So you can see the studs are coming in, everything's coming in. This one's for a dental office specifically. And you can see this shows kind of the guts of it, what's going to be done, how it's going to be built. This is for North American standards for the record. We can simplify and alter towards what we're needing. We might not need rigid 3 inches of rigid foam in Brazil. That's not needed. But the base frame is still the same. We can just adapt it to what's needed to be done. So this one here is the dentist office. This is with a packaged bar unit in the back, which I would recommend for all the units for this one. This is use the bar units, or we can do some sort of a ductless system, depending on where we are. But for North American standards, it's worth the extra funding, 6,000-7,000 Canadian extra to put one of these in, because they really are good workhorse units that have heating and cooling, and they run on power, and off you go. They can run on gas too if need be, or propane. So they're much more versatile and reliable. So this is kind of showing you, this is a 3-op unit made out of 2 pieces. We put it together and the dentist can get going. This is the same base frame of everything that we're trying to do here. And that is essentially what I want to log. So my next thing, what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to finish this 100% based on this remote area option, and then I'm going to do my urban option. And then that's going to be our blueprint. And now if we have sites that we have to alter to, then at that point, that's when ITTS will say, okay, well, we need X amount of funding for this in order to adapt the drawing to this specific site. And if you want to have the units a little bit different than our standard specifications, then we would have to negotiate that pricing separately. But I want to, right now for me, is I want to really document my progress on my design as much as I can every time I do work. So that way you can kind of get a feel for the direction that I'm going. And also, if you have any suggestions or if you have anything that you're looking at to make it better, to improve, or whatever it is, I'm open. I'm open to suggestions. And so this is it. I'm designing a village now. Another thing I want to go over is all of these things here. The roofs of these things are going to be covered with a series of, for the remote option, solar panels. My whole goal for this is how do you make an entire town 100% self-sufficient? Anywhere from the hot water to electricity to plumbing to fresh water to filtered fresh water to potable water to gray water, and all of those needs that are needed. So that way we can pick out a spot, assess how far the local water source is. We drop one container there with the water filtration to take in the fresh water, filtrate it, and bring it in. And also we have the gray water and black water distribution and processing. So that way, even when you flush the toilet with these things and your individual unit and that gets cleaned out, well, it has to go somewhere. So as a backup, we have a complete system of gray water and black water tanks for the cultivation and the communal buildings. So each individual unit more or less is going to be able to sustain itself with maintenance, with weekly to bi-weekly maintenance. And then the larger buildings, when needed, it's going to have its own micro power plant attached to that unit. And then that will be able to take care of a lot of those needs too. So that's why I have the perimeter. So it's security, it's extra, it's the extra room that we need for the greenhouses and the cultivation and the gray water distribution and battery storage and cold storage and everything that we need. I'm kind of doubling that and making it a 2-in-1 thing where we're actually using the perimeter of the actual town to meet all those needs so it's useful. And of course, once I do a 3D model, which is my next thing, once I get everything down, this is going to be a very nice greenery walkway. It's going to be open on the indoors where those could be shops, they could be storage units, they could be greenhouses, they could be community gardens, they could be a whole sort of anything essentially that we think is needed. I'm just going to make a floor plan for what I like, and then it can be interchanged according to what the needs are. So That's essentially what I have right now. That's my next step. And then after that, I am going to keep working on this. And in order to make this thing a reality, we definitely need some funding, which of course is Robbie's department. But I will do everything in my ability to make this become a reality as close as possible, and then we can get this thing going. So, first one will end up either on this side of the border or in Ohio or in Detroit. I love the Detroit option because we can use this as the urban. There is 8.5 acres of Detroit. I'm sure that's vacant right now, unfortunately, that we can find and make this big, huge. We can make this essentially, in an old automotive parts plant in Lansing, for example. We can use the existing building there and use the same formula and the same layout to an old automotive plant in Lansing that's rotting away, for example. I don't know if it's in Lansing, but you get the idea. So this is adaptable to what we need. We can even do this in the urban option in a giant parking lot if need be. We can set this whole thing up. It's even easier to do drainage. And so this is going to be an interesting endeavor. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, I've worked a long time on this, gone through a lot of heartaches. My first year in the modular business, I sold 1 unit, and I was literally starving. Like I didn't know, and but I knew that this was valuable, and I'm kind of feeling that this is kind of your calling, my calling, I should say. But I want to get into the process where I want to kind of document what I want to do in order to make my dreams come true, and also for the education of others, because we all have only so much time, and what good is it if I'm the only person that can so somebody that I can eventually pass this on to, and but until we get to that point, let's get the first road built, and then we can kind of start spreading this thing around the continent and then hopefully around the world, and we can go from there. So, and that's it. That's my vlog today. Essentially it. So we'll talk to you soon, and we'll check back in with you guys and show you some more cool stuff that I've done.